Hi everyone, I'm James, and if you're seeing this, it means that right now, my very first album, Rush of the Tide, is available to be listened to on all streaming platforms. I've been working towards this album literally for years, so obviously I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. So here is what the album cover art looks like. Thank you to my friend Riley for drawing it. This was my initial sketch of ideas versus the final product. Great job, Riley. If you look on the sales, you can see the titles of the pieces in the album. Starting off, we have Steel Groove. It's a short piece, very fun, kind of goofy. After that, we have the C-Suite, which is more expressive. It's in a neoclassical style, and I wrote it about 3.5 years ago. That's in 5 movements. And the last piece on the album is called Solitude Sonata. Solitude is about being alone in nature and experiencing the wonders of nature. And I really explored a ton of possibilities of what's possible and what sounds can be created with just one viola. That's in 4 movements, making a total of 10 tracks on the album. That's all you really need to know. You can go listen to it right now and I'm sure you'll love it. However, if you'd like to know more about the background stories behind each piece and find out about sheet music, then keep watching this video and I'll talk about all of that. Starting off with the first track on the album, Steel Groove. As I said, it's kind of goofy, very fun. It really creates a nice groove feel. There's definitely some jazz influence in there as well. It's called Steel Groove because I'm trying to see how much of a groove I can create just using the steel strings of a viola. I wrote this piece to be a really good start to any kind of recital program, and I think it's also a great start to the album. Also, because it has the key of C major, which is the same as the next piece on the album, the C-Suite. I wrote the C-Suite following my first year at school in New York City. I had a lot of mixed feelings at that time. I was leaving home to do something I loved, and also the world was full of turmoil. The piece follows the metaphorical story of someone leaving home to set sail on the open ocean, searching for destiny. The first movement is called Voyage, and it's just about the first leg of the journey. There's lots of adventure and also some storms, but there's a prevailing sense of determination. The second movement is called Lighthouse, and it's very free and lyrical. There's also a very strong sense of nostalgia. The third movement, Waves, is about being alone on the open ocean, pondering one's feelings, and feeling them ebb and flow just like the waves. It's very simple and minimalistic, and it's one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's also the oldest part of the album. I wrote this movement when I was 16 years old. The fourth movement is called Shanty, and at this point the character has almost arrived back home. They're imagining the calls of the trumpets and the celebration. I was originally planning to write only 4 movements in the C-Suite, but because of the turmoil that was still in the world and a lot of the conflicting emotions I had at the time, I felt like I couldn't just end the piece in a happy and simple way. Instead, I destroyed that celebratory ending to Shanty and added another movement, which is sort of like an elegy. That movement is called Raindrops. In this story, the character returns home to find everything burnt to the ground. Nobody is left. As they process their grief, rain starts to fall. And at the end of the piece, they sail back off into the ocean at sunset because all they have left is their destiny. And at this point, if you listen to the album all the way from start to finish, there will be a super cool transition because the C-Suite was in C major, it ends on a low open C, and then the next piece, Solitude Sonata, starts with a low D flat. Solitude Sonata is in D flat major, and it's about an individual's relationship with the vastness and beauty of nature. The first movement is called In the Cold Morning Light. It's about the feeling of waking up early in the morning when everything is very still. It feels icy and crisp outside, and if there is sunlight, it has a very cold feel to it. This movement does also have some very cozy and warm feeling melodies to contrast that coldness. The next movement is my very favorite track off the album. It's called In a Daydream by the Sea. It takes place on the beach with the rolling waves crashing against the sand, and it feels very lonely and broken-hearted. In the middle, you drift off into a beautiful daydream, only to return to the emptiness towards the end of the piece. The third movement of Solitude Sonata is the most difficult 5 minutes of music I've ever written. It uses a ton of extended techniques, especially surrounding pizzicato, all in service of kind of creating this disco beat. This movement is about watching the sunset as the colors gradually change and disperse throughout the sky, also reflecting on a body of water like a lake or the ocean. And that brings us to the final track on the album, And the Moonlight Calls Again. This is about the twilight hours where everything is very eerie and kind of creepy, and then they transition to the beautiful moonrise. The third and fourth movement combine to make the start of a poem, which goes, When the sun falls softly and the moonlight calls again, the tide rushes in, bringing cold, clawing at the warmth we defend. And this is where the title of the album comes from, Rush of the Tide. Not only does it come from the poem that goes with the third and fourth movements of Solitude Sonata, but Rush of the Tide is also extremely relevant to the piece that's entirely about the ocean, the C-Suite. To me, Rush of the Tide describes the unpredictable flow of life and emotions and how that's portrayed in music. That's all about the tracks on the album. I want to talk a little bit about the recording process. So thankfully I got a grant for this project from Juilliard, and I had my friend Marco do the recording for me as well as all the editing.
Oh, there should be a little bit more space.
Big thank you to him, he was great to work with, really made me feel comfortable asking for anything I wanted to make the final product feel exactly how I wanted it to be. In the end, it's definitely not perfect, but I'm totally okay with that. Life isn't perfect either. I never perform perfectly. I did have quite a bit of editing done just to make it pleasant enough to listen to and make my musical messages very clear. That brings me to the last part of this video, which I'm sure many of you are very curious about. That is, how do you get sheet music for all the pieces on this album? I've gone back and forth about this for a while, but I decided I don't want to charge any money for my sheet music, so you can get it completely for free by clicking on the links down below in the description. I put a lot of work into making sure the music is very clear and thorough and neat, and that's because I want a lot of people to play my music, and I want those people to tell other people about my music. So instead of making them pay money to me, all I ask is that they tell a ton of people about my album, about my music, and if they have a great time playing it, then tell all their friends about it. Getting my name out there professionally as a violist and a composer is so much more helpful to me than having some loose pocket change. That's all for this video. I hope you have some time to go listen to my album soon. If you like something you hear on it, please let me know down in the comments. As I said, I put a ton of work into this, and it represents years of my journey as a composer and as a violist. So knowing that people are listening to it and appreciating it will really mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching and for listening, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.